You think you know your roommate until you wake up and realize that you never truly did. One vanished after a murder and walked free. Another stood in blocked-so dorm claiming insanity. And the third? A young woman murdered in a foreign country, her so-called friend convicted, then exonerated, while her real killer served barely over a decade. These aren't just chilling crimes. These are the 3 college roommate murders that will leave you questioning everything you thought was safe. Let's get right into them. In the early hours of June 4, 2007, in a modest off-campus apartment in Minot, North Dakota, a tragedy unfolded that would echo through nearly 2 decades of investigative twists and courtroom drama. ANITA KNUTSON, an 18-year-old student of Minot State University with a promising future, was discovered fatally stabbed in her bedroom. Her adoptive parents, who had raised her since she was just a little baby, after relocating from Anaheim, was devastated by the loss of their daughter. ANITA was known for her warmth and talent, and even having published a book in middle school. At the time of her college years, ANITA shared the apartment with her roommate, Nicole Rice, who is also formerly known as Nicole Thomas. And at first, these women shared their everyday routines together. They cooked together, they shared chores together, and were generally described to be on good terms. But this soon would change. The 2 women's relationship began to sour over what many witnesses described as everyday disputes. And this is exactly the friction that would later capture the public's attention. Friends recalled heated arguments over what seemed to be very trivial issues, such as household chores and even Anita's alarm going off. And this really started to paint a picture of a very tense domestic environment that might have sown the seeds for conflict. And for nearly 15 years, the investigation into Anita's murder just grew cold. There was very little evidence or even DNA at the scene when it was being investigated, and witnesses were giving conflicting statements. This really left the law enforcement with a puzzle that resisted a solution. In 2022, a new wave of attention came as the true crime series called Justice got involved. The investigative team for the TV series re-examined all the case's files and really pushed the local authorities to reopen the investigation. And all of this fresh scrutiny finally led to an arrest of a suspect. And this person was no other than Anita's former roommate, Nicole Rice. Rice, who was then 37, was accused of a crime that some witnesses remembered her confessing to on drunken nights, nearly 2 decades earlier. Throughout the ensuing trial, which was relocated to Grand Forks to ensure an impartial jury, prosecutors presented a case built largely on witness testimonies. And several individuals recalled overhearing Rice, who was drunk, confessing to having done it. And apparently this happened during a heated argument over minor things going wrong in the apartment. And this claim really struck many as so disproportionate to the gravity of taking someone else's life. Rice's aunt, Brenda L. Glynns, also took the stand and indicated that after the murder of KNUTSON, Rice relocated to New Mexico about 4 or 6 weeks after the incident took place. And during a 2-day car trip, Glynns then helped Rice move back to the States. And this is exactly where Rice filled her aunt in all the details that allegedly happened on the night of Anita's murder. Apparently, the murderer pierced through Anita's cutscene and then hid in a bedroom while waiting on Anita to come out of the shower. And after the attacker killed Anita, they fled, leaving Anita wrapped up in her bathrobe. And apparently, Rice recalled Anita looking very peaceful like that, even though the scene looked absolutely horrific, and it looked as if Anita had been raped as well. She also remembered seeing the sink being filled with water, where the attacker must have washed their hands and the knife off because it was all bloodied. Now, Rice was also apparently upset by the fact that her iPod had gone missing and that Anita's killer must have stolen it. And this is definitely something that would be very strange to bring up, considering her roommate was literally just brutally attacked and killed. But what do I know? Even her aunt confessed that Rice did not react the way most people would have reacted if their friend just died like that. And then Rice continued on to say that Anita deserved to die. But apparently Rice's story as to what had happened on that night of the murder kept changing throughout the years. And Rice even admitted herself that she knew that she could not have been associated with the murder because there was no DNA found either on the knife or on Anita's body or anywhere else in the room. And so she thought she was off the hook. Forensic experts testified that the murder weapon, a folding knife, yielded complex DNA results and that there were traces from multiple contributors found. And these, unfortunately, did not conclusively pinpoint Rice as the killer. Alternative theories also surfaced. The individual Rice spoke to her aunt about as the potential killer, his whereabouts had actually later been verified elsewhere. The defense really stressed these investigative gaps, arguing that the media hype and the pressure from high-profile true crime shows had tainted the original case file. And on March 26, 2025, after days of intense courtroom exchanges, testimony and cross-examination, a jury deliberated for just about 5 hours. And after this, the verdict was announced. Rice was found not guilty. In the Grand Forks County room, Rice's family erupted in motion, embracing and shedding tears in relief, while friends and supporters gathered in a quiet prayer circle outside of the courthouse. In contrast, members of Anita's family expressed grief and frustration. For them, the verdict, though legally binding, did very little to ease the emotional scars of losing a beloved daughter. Defense attorney Rick Sand argued during closing remarks that the case against Rice was built on inconsistent statements and called case hearsay, a sentiment echoed by others who questioned the investigative methods used over the years. Meanwhile, the prosecution argued that the lack of physical evidence left unanswered questions about the true chain of events that night. As you can imagine, after the verdict, the community slept very divided. While Rice walks free, the unresolved mysteries of that fateful night continue to haunt those who knew Anita. The case really stands as a reminder of how a blend of human error, media influence, and investigative challenges can really shape and sometimes misshape the pursuit of justice. But even with that, it is also quite astonishing that, even with so many confessions that highlighted Rice's clear involvement in the murder, she was still acquitted of all charges. What else needs to happen for the murderer to be sent to prison? On October 5, 2022, the Purdue University campus woke up to a state of shock. Jinmin Shah, a 22-year-old cybersecurity major from Seoul, South Korea, called campus police in the early hours to report something terrible. He just found his roommate dead in their dorm room at the McCutcheon Hall. The officer did not wait and rushed into the dorm room. Upon arrival, they discovered the lifeless body of a 20-year-old VARUN MANISH CHHEDA, a data science major from Indianapolis, slumped in a chair. He had suffered multiple shard force injuries to his head and neck. A folding knife, which was presumed to be the murder weapon, was found laid on the floor nearby. But this was not the only thing they noticed in the room. The student that alerted them to this scene, Shah, was standing there looking at everything the police was doing, and he was wearing clothes that were obviously stained with blood. So, seeing the murder weapon was right there and the state of Shah, the officers didn't hesitate and arrested Shah right there at the scene. Now, following his arrest, Shah was charged with 1 count of murder. But to put a twist onto this whole story, in a motion filed by his attorney, Carl Cray, Shah indicated plans to pursue an insanity defense. This basically meant that Shah would not be able to be sent to prison for the murder of CHHEDA, but that he would instead likely end up in a psychiatric facility. This has actually been tried by many convicts before, as they see it as an easier option to their sentence. And because of this, the defense requested the court to appoint 2 to 3 qualified mental health professionals to be able to properly assess Shah's competency to stand his trial. And this was all aimed to determine whether Shah was actually mentally capable of understanding the proceedings and assisting in his defense. And in the meantime, the Purdue University community was left in such a state of shock. CHHEDA was remembered as a brilliant and kind-hearted student with a very promising future. Vigils were held across the campus, with students and faculty members mourning the loss while trying to come to terms with the reality of such violence occurring within their community. University officials offered counseling services and really stressed the importance of mental health awareness among students. And the trial is currently still in progress, and the focus still remains on Shah's mental state. Shah already showed signs of mental health issues back in South Korea before he moved to the States to begin his studies. The court's appointed mental health experts have come back to say he is deemed incompetent, and so now he's at the Logansport State Hospital for his 2nd mental health treatment. The outcome will significantly influence the trial's direction, potentially affecting sentencing and future mental health interventions. The case continues to draw attention, highlighting the critical intersection of mental health and criminal justice system. And as for Shah, he stated that he was very sorry and he only killed his roommate because he was blackmailed. He didn't divulge any more information about this claim, however. And before this, Shah did report hallucinations and chronic psychosis and delusional thoughts, such as him working for the CIA. And it is all unclear whether this man is actually mentally ill, or if this is just an elaborate plan to throw the investigators off. He stopped taking this medication while in jail, and so as of 2025, the case is still on hold as Shah still remains incompetent to stand his trial. This case is a prime example of how things can get messy, misunderstood, and even forced. It resulted in multiple lives being shattered and marred for many, many years, with people still healing from it today. On November 1st, 2007, Meredith KERCHER, a 21-year-old British exchange student from the University of Leeds, was found murdered in her bedroom in Perugia, Italy. She had been studying abroad while sharing an apartment with 3 other women. This included Amanda Knox, a 20-year-old American student from Seattle. KERCHER's body was discovered the following day, and partially clothed and covered by a duvet, with the throat fatally slashed. It was also determined that she had been sexually assaulted. Since there were people living with KERCHER at the time, the investigation quickly focused specifically on Amanda Knox and her then boyfriend, Rafael Solicito. Knox had reported returning to the apartment on the morning of November 2nd to find the front door ajar, blood in the bathroom, and KERCHER's bedroom door locked. She later returned with Solicito, and upon discovering KERCHER's body, the police were called. During intense police interrogations, Knox ended up implicating herself and her employer, Patrick Lumumba, in the murder. Lumumba was arrested, but he was released 2 weeks later as his alibi came back as confirmed. To complicate this case further, Knox later stated that her confession had been actually forced out of her during lengthy and aggressive interrogation without legal counsel. And so the investigators had to start again practically from the scratch. They did sweep the scene for fingerprints and other DNA evidence, but those were taking time to come back. However, eventually the forensics evidence led the investigators to another name, Rudy Gued. Gued was an Ivorian national, and it was his fingerprints and DNA that were actually found all over the crime scene. As a result of this, Gued was promptly arrested and was then tried separately. And in 2008, he was finally convicted of the sexual assault and murder of KERCHER. He was initially sentenced to 30 years in prison, but this was later reduced to 16 years on appeal. Personally, I have no idea how this even happens. Like, he raped and murdered a girl, so why on earth would any judge rule in his favor? This is so messed up, like he should have gotten life in prison without any parole. A year later, in 2009, Knox and Solicito were also tried and ended up being convicted of KERCHER's murder, receiving 26 and 25 years in prison respectively. And again, to me, this is absolutely baffling. The prosecution argued that the murder was the result of a violent altercation involving all 3 individuals, so Knox, Solicito, and KERCHER. However, the case against Knox and Solicito faced significant scrutiny over the handling of forensics evidence and how the investigation was being handled as well. And so in 2011, the convictions were overturned, and both were released after spending 4 years in prison. However, in 2013, Italy's Supreme Court ordered a retrial, and so in 2014, Knox and Solicito were again found guilty. But this was finally cleared in 2015, when the Supreme Court definitely acquitted both individuals. And apparently it was because of lack of evidence and stunning flaws in the investigation. Now, following Gued's conviction, he actually ended up only serving 13 years of his 16-year sentence before being released in 2021. Again, whoever made that decision should be eaten by dogs. Amanda Knox returned to the United States and has since become an advocate for criminal justice reform, and she has been sharing her experiences through her writing and public speaking. She has also addressed her past with her children, emphasizing resilience and the importance of truth. And with all of this in mind, the case of Meredith KERCHER's murder remains a poignant example of the complexities and challenges with the criminal justice system. It also highlights the importance of thorough and unbiased investigations, and of course some very questionable decisions made in regards to the actual rapist and murderer. I really feel for KERCHER's family, as it just doesn't feel like her death was actually avenged. Some guy just got reduced sentence for his heinous crimes, and so whoever decided on this should step down from their function. But as always, let me know your thoughts. Until next time.